everyone, my name is Lori and I am streaming live from Washington State today. It is bright and early. It is 8 a.m. here, so I'm going to teach you how to paint this lovely scene. So I'll teach you step by step and show you the items I'm using. These hearts down here are optional. You can write whatever you want in the sand. And I own a paint and sip business, and what that is I encourage people to eat and drink while I teach them how to paint. So usually I go to venues and I teach, while they're kind of drinking and eating, but with the coronavirus we are all stuck at home, so I hope I can offer you something fun and calming to take your mind off of everything that's going on. So painting can be easy for anybody. The way I teach it, step by step, just keep calm. And I think what I'm going to do now is we'll start and I'll show you the products I'm using, but for 1 second the camera is going to be a little off, so hold on for 1 second. I'm going to flip the camera around. I'm going to play with the lighting a little bit so you guys can see too. Go here. Here we go. Let's see. Make sure this isn't upside down for you guys. Oh, I think that is upside down. Let's see. Well, it's okay. I can paint upside down. So, let's adjust this, tighten this up. There we go. And we'll do this. So you can find me on Facebook, and I am also on Instagram. I do have a web page. Let's see. Oh yeah, there we go. I do have a web page you can go to. It is called canvaslychromatize.com. I realize the words are actually backwards. I'm going to adjust my lighting here. There we go. There we go. I'll just hide that because that's backwards. When you stream from another country, things can get a little technical, but that's okay. If you do go onto my website at canvaslychromatize.com, you will see, if you scroll down a little bit, I am offering a free gift for viewers today. And this is mostly for people who have kids, especially people who are homeschooling right now. You can download traceables. There we go. And then for those traceables, you can get like a little kids pack. All right, so let me put this here. All right, I think this is good. Let's see. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I'm gonna wait for the camera to catch up so I can see if we are upside down or not. So I will show you the colors we're using. So again, we're gonna be painting. There we go. This scene here. Right there. And so we're going to start with the background, we're going to blend, and then we're going to do the water, and we're going to do the sand. And I'll occasionally show you that so you can see and check in. There we go. All right, we'll see if that's upside down. But so the colors we are going to start with. So you can grab any brand of paint. You do not need to have the paint brands that I am using. You can use, I know there's Deco Art, there's Folk Life, there's Apple Barrel. I don't know what everybody has at their local stores, but I actually am using Liquitex. So Liquitex is a really good brand. It is a beginner brand, but it's still an artist brand versus if you were to use craft paint, which is a little bit different. Craft paint comes in those little bottles, so that would be like Deco Art and Folk Life. So the first thing I'm going to do is I have my palette here. You can also use a paper plate. You're going to want a paper towel or something to wipe your brushes off. Or you can get like this, I have an old washcloth. And this I've used for years. I just bleach it every time and it gets all discolored. And then you're going to want this is a number 1 inch or a 3/4 inch brush. This is a flat brush. And then I always grab a smaller flat brush. So this is like a number 12, but you can go a little bit smaller if you want to. And then any size of round brush. So this is a number 8 round brush. It depends on the brand you're getting, but I like this round brush. It's pretty good quality. And then I get a little detail brush as well. So this is a brand new one, so this is pretty pointy. And this, you can find, my favorite brushes are Simply Simmons. So we'll use all those brushes, and I'll tell you which one I'm using at what time. I already have yellow on my plate, as I was going to do kind of like a sample painting earlier. But let's start putting colors on. So this one I'm using is called Brilliant Purple, but you just need a purple. If you don't have purple, you can mix blue and red, and then you can also add white if you really wanted to lighten it up. Because this is a sunset, I probably would a little bit. So I'll put a little bit of purple. This is medium magenta here. You just need a pink. And if you don't have pink, you can do red and white, and that makes a pink. And then I have a cadmium orange, so you just need some sort of orange. And you know, red and yellow make orange. So if you have just the primary colors, that's all you need. And then we have a primary yellow, and that is kind of this one, but this one actually, this is a different brand than what I had, so I'm still going to put that on the plate here. That's for our sun. And I'm definitely going to put some white and black on here because we will need that throughout the painting. It's always nice to have these just in case for some highlights or some shadows. And then blue for our water. This is a Brilliant Blue. And then just for fun, you don't have to do this part either, but I grabbed a phthalo green. This is kind of a teal, so if you don't have a teal color, you can mix green and blue and it makes a teal color. You can also keep it dark or add white if you want it lighter. And this is when I do the water, I just kind of alternate between these colors just to add some definition. And then the last 2 colors are for the sand. So if you just have one brown, that's all you need. This is for like the darker part of the sand when we draw the hearts. And then I already have a lighter brown. This is a raw sienna. And this is just a little knockoff brand, but if you don't, you can make lighter brown by adding white and brown to make this color. You just need a tiny, tiny bit. So the first thing I'm going to do is we're going to start with the sky, but we're actually going to start with the sun. We're going to kind of find our horizon line. So if you were to find a horizon line, you can make it anywhere you want. I'm going to try to keep it towards the top, like just above halfway here. And then we're going to start with just the yellow. I want to start with just the yellow. So I'm going to go right in. You can grab either one, and I'm going to find where I want that sun. So I think I'm going to put it right here just to get an idea of where you want this. So to paint the sun, you can do 2 things. You can do kind of like a half sun, and it doesn't have to be perfect. And then kind of fill it in. And you guys do not have to have a canvas. This is a 12 by 16 canvas, but you can also use any surface. So you can do like any size canvas. You can do a canvas panel. This is a board. You can grab paper. You can grab a plate. You can grab a chair, whatever you want to grab. Every surface is fun to paint on. You can always paint on anything. Obviously, as long as it's yours. So there is a half sun. And then what I like to do, because when we do the actual painting, you see how it's kind of hazy. That's the look that we want. So we're going to play with that a lot. That is actually the hardest part of this painting. And it doesn't have to be perfect because it's a sunset, right? So not every sun sets in this perfect little sun dome. So after I paint my sun, I like to take, this is the thin part of the brush. So if you have a really nice brush, you get a really thin tip. And then you just take it and you put it in the sun and you start coming off to the side a little bit to get these little hazy lines. And when we do the rest of the sky, we're just going to fill that excess in a little bit. But you want to work hard to try to keep the shape of the sun. Even though it's not a perfect circle anymore, you do want to get that half dome shape to kind of stay. Kind of like so. We're going to play with it a little bit. And if you ever feel like you're one of those people who are like, oh, I just can't paint, I'm not artistic, well, just try it. It's always fun just to try, and you're always surprised if you follow the step-by-step. You're always surprised in the end, like what you can actually do. A lot of people don't have confidence. I actually started this business because I find it very calming. My grandpa actually was very artistic. And after he had passed away, I had found that painting was just kind of like very therapeutic for me. So I actually started a business, and I've done very well with it, and I think that it's a lot of fun for people, and people always come to me and say like, oh, I didn't think I can do that. This looks so good. I'm so proud of myself. But they actually try, so that's the idea. All right, so I have some sun on there. And you can change the color of your background any way you want. I have purple, pink, and orange because I love those colors together. But you can do any colors you want. You can add some blues in there. You can add some reds in there. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to rinse off my brush, get all that yellow off. And I know this sounds obvious, but when you rinse off a brush, this is just a cup of water. You want to roll the brush around on the bottom gently and touch the bottom. Some people swirl mid-water, and that doesn't really do anything. So you do want to touch the bottom of the cup and swirl. But then you really want to make sure when you wipe your bristles off that you just kind of get all those water drops off. You don't want any water dripping from here because it will drop onto your canvas. Get this little guy off. And then I'm just going to start with the top of the sky. So when I do this, I'm just going to go right into my purple. And so Liquitex has great coverage. And I just like to go back and forth. If you're using those craft paints, kind of the cheaper little bottles, typically you need more than one coat. With Liquitex, sometimes you do, depending on the color, but very rarely. Now, when you're going back and forth, you want to do long strokes all the way across the canvas. If you do like short, choppy strokes, it gets really streaky. So mostly you want to avoid that. You can, if you really like that look, you can. I don't prefer that look personally, but it is your painting, so you can do whatever you want. A lot of the time when I'm in classes, people always compare their painting to mine. And you can't do that because every time I paint this, it looks completely different. So no person's going to paint one painting exactly the same. All right, so that part goes pretty quickly, and you do want to do the background while it's wet. Kind of like a wet on wet painting, because while it's wet, it blends a lot easier than if this were dry, it would be really hard to blend. So I'm actually not going to rinse off my brush. I'm just going to wipe it off on the side. And I left a little bit above the sun because I want my pink there. And I'm dipping right into my pink and blending up into this purple. And oftentimes, you just have to go back and forth on where these two colors meet multiple times for it to blend. Some people give up pretty quickly and they're like, oh, it's just a pink and a purple line. Well, you do have to attempt to blend and bring that purple and pink together. And I'm not pressing hard. It's actually very gentle, and I'm going back and forth. And you can bring the pink down as far as you want. So if this is something that you guys enjoy, on my Facebook page every Sunday, at least during the coronavirus quarantine, I am going live with a free painting tutorial. So if you do end up liking the page, you will see that every Sunday. There are events posted already on the Facebook for the next 2, I believe. Okay. Now, as we get closer to the sun, what you're going to want to do is same thing. So I'm just going to take, but I'm going to go towards the sun. And you don't want to come in too much. See, I'm still leaving a little bit of space because you don't want that sun to change shape. And I'm just doing short, soft strokes. You don't want a ton of paint either because otherwise it will never dry. And this needs to be dry, especially if you're going to try to fix it. Maybe you ruin it too much or you don't like it and you want to come back. Well, if you get, what you can always do, so this is best actually when the paint is wet, what you can always do, and I'll try to do it on one part so I can show you. But if you mess up, so the best thing to have on hand is either like a baby wipe, or that's why I like to have a washcloth. Because if you do, you can take this washcloth, dip it in your water, even if it has paint on it, and then just wipe off the area you don't want while it's wet, and kind of keep wiping it, and then just start over. Of course, you shouldn't have to erase the entire background, but just where you didn't like it. Now, if you guys have ever watched Bob Ross, which I'm sure a ton of you have, he is my inspiration, so he is what makes it so calming. His voice is so calming. And that's what my grandpa used to paint with him, and, well, not with him, but his videos, right? And he's just so nice to watch, even if you're not painting. And he's got his little pet squirrel. I think it's Peapod. It's super cute. All right, so I am going to rinse my brush off from that pink. And again, wipe it all off. Wipe all those drops off. And I'm going to go into orange. So this cad orange is pretty bright, if you will. It's very soft. But remember, you want to do the same thing. Bring it up into that pink. And you don't have to go past the sun. You can keep it there. Maybe you do want to go like a little bit past it, and that's okay. Because we're just going to put land back there. We're just going to put some black hills and stuff if you want to. And same thing. Bring that orange in there. Very softly and very slowly if you prefer. Now, see right here, I'm already seeing that the pink had dried a little bit. That was really fast, right? So I might go back in, not even rinsing off my brush, and put some more pink in here and try to get this to blend a little bit more. And you know what? Oftentimes, and I've, given up on this fact, but oftentimes, sometimes it just doesn't work out the way you want it to, and you just have to roll with it. You can't get angry at the painting. You can't get angry at yourself. You just have to go with it and then try again later. I paint every day, so for me, it's a little bit easier, and I've given up on that whole OCD factor that, no offense, but a lot of women have, because we want all these lines to be perfect, and when we're painting doesn't, it just doesn't work like that. Especially these styles of paintings, right? So if you go to like paint and sip classes, they definitely don't work like that as often as you think. And you just kind of have to let it go. It's more about the therapy of it, the socializing of it, being with your friends, and just getting out, maybe getting away from the kids if you have kids. My husband and I are expecting our first baby. We are 6 months pregnant. So actually, this quarantine it's been hard, but at the same time, it's been nice because I don't keep myself at risk, but I can do virtual paintings. And I actually started a paint club on my website that anyone can join. I teach these in a private group, and it's at least for a limited amount of time. I opened it on April 15th. And then I'm closing it on May 15th, and for only this launch month, you get it for $35 US, and you get 7 tutorials, and they're different paintings. They're a little bit more elaborate, and you can cancel anytime, and then from there on out, after that first month, you get 3 tutorials a month, plus discounts and a lot of freebies, so you can check that out on my page too. I believe it's under Virtual Paint Party Club. So I have the orange and the pink and the purple on here, right? So I just dipped right back into my yellow. And I'm just going to fill in this space. Now you see how that pink, because it was still wet, starts to drag into the sun a little bit? Well, if it doesn't, like I want it to, but if it does it too much, and these are just soft strokes, right? If it does it too much, all I do is wipe off that brush, grab more yellow, and go back in. And remember, this is a very light touch because you want to keep that shape of the thin part of the brush. But here's the other thing is sometimes people can try to make it look a certain way, but you can't take out your painting characteristics of, you know, what you normally paint. So if I have people come to my paint parties, and I have a lot of people who attend, most of them, because they're addicts, like most of us, they usually have, if you look at all their paintings, they have like, they can't hide that technique they have. They have a certain kind of way they paint, and they can't get out of it. And I love it. You know, you're your own worst critic. So a lot of the time, you know, we're looking so close at our painting. We're here like a few inches away half the time. But, you know, if you have strangers come over or just people you know or anything, most people view a painting from 3 feet away. And unless your friends are jerks, they're not going to go up to your painting and say, oh my gosh, I don't think that you did that sun right. I think it looks terrible. You're a terrible painter. No one's going to say that to you. And you know what? Even if they think that, hopefully they don't say that to you. If they do, just throw them out. Not very nice friends. All right, nice and hazy. See how that works? I'll bring that a little bit closer. So even so, like my brush strokes, it's hard for you to see them unless they're a little bit closer up. Okay, so we have that on there. I might play with some orange here a little bit. Kind of blend that back in, maybe some pink. Blend some pink down. And so I've had free tutorials on my Facebook page for a little bit now. Even if you go to my website, you can find those tutorials and their YouTube links. The supply list, I always supply a supply list. And some of my paintings have traceables. So like if you can print it out and trace it onto the canvas with carbon paper. If you have it, it's kind of really hard to get right now. Or the old-fashioned tracing kind of way that we used to do when we were little, by tracing, flipping over, and shading. But there are some really fun ones that are on there that you can do now and practice some painting while you're stuck inside. And they're actually really good for kids too. All right, so that about does it for my sky. I don't want to mess with it too much. What I'm not going to do, but I always tell people to do, is to paint the sides and the top of the canvas as you go. It's easier to do when you're on an easel. Rather than putting it on flat, but this is how you guys see it best, because I'm always touching it. So I'm not going to do that, but paint it as you go. The next thing we're going to do is the water. So I just rinsed off my brush and wiped it off. You want to make sure to get all that paint off there. I'm going to go straight into the blue. So this is going to be blue to start. This is my Brilliant Blue. If you have a regular blue, you can add some white to it again to make it lighter if you want. And I'm going to come right up to that orange because we're just going to do some black there, right? So it doesn't really matter what that looks like. Obviously, you don't want to be too aggressive and go way up. So I'll probably come to right about there. And you don't want to bring your blue all the way down because you want to make like where you want your beach. So it's going to be, maybe I want my beach to look like that underneath. So a little bit of water, maybe I want it to come down. And I'll go back and forth. And again, this is way easier to blend when it's wet. When it's dry, it just doesn't work. And then without rinsing off my brush, I'm going to go into my teal color and just kind of throw that in there. It makes like a mermaidish color. We're going to end up doing some white in there too and putting some color waves. If you're painting at home, often I have a hair dryer on hand because I just get kind of impatient wanting, I want to do something to the background, but it's wet and it's not going to work very well. I just hair dry it. It's a little smelly, but that's okay. So you can see how there's just like a little bit of teal in there. Maybe you don't want to blend it all the way. Kind of like so. And this will all be black, but I'm going to come back to that later. So I have my blue in there. Again, paint your sides as you go. If this helps, I'll show it a little bit closer here. So you can see some of that teal maybe. And then I'm going to rinse off my brush, and we're going to do the sand. So remember, I have two browns. I have a light brown and a dark brown. So this will be your light brown. And again, you can make it by mixing a little bit of dark brown with some white. Anytime you pull from white, I'll tell you this, you always pull from the side instead of like if you were going to make light brown, dipping the brown right in the middle of all that white and using it. Well, you don't need that much. So it's a waste of paint. So I always say like dip it into the brown, pull out some from the side and mix a little bit. Whenever I mix color, I also don't blend it into this perfect color just to put it on my canvas. I tend to just kind of double dip a little bit and let the blending happen on the canvas. So the first thing I'm going to do, this is my lighter brown that I have. This is actually called raw sienna. And we're going to paint the bottom of the canvas. Oh, see, this still has a little bit of blue, but that's okay. It's just water. If this happens, you can rinse off your brush. This is also where if you really wanted, you can take this washcloth. This is what I was talking about earlier. And wring it out, kind of make sure it's not dripping. And just wipe it off. See how easy that is? Now, if there was painting all around, I would watch the tail end of this to make sure it's not rubbing on that. And then just wipe it off. We all do it, no matter how good at painting we are, no matter how free it is. And then I'm also going to dip right into that white. And I'm going to fill in this entire space because I want this a light tan color. I want it to be that sandy color, right? So if I'm dipping into my raw sienna, and again, this is where I'm pulling out some white, and I'm not even blending it. This is double loading. And I'm just going to let it do its thing. I'm going to come right up to the edge of the blue. And back and forth. Now you see, like if I don't make that perfect color, it gets streaky, as in you get like some darker shades, you get some lighter shades, and that's just a natural effect by double loading the brush, and that's what I like. And I'm just kind of going over the edge here a little bit. Soften that line. Maybe rinse off that brush just in case some blue got on it here. Alright, going back in, I'm going to finish up down here. This is where it gets a little tricky when you're hanging on to it if you're painting flat because you're trying to hold on to it and paint it at the same time. You know what a lot of people do is if they want to paint it really bad, and the thing about this is you can always go back and rewatch it. Especially, and the ones I have on my page too, you can always go back and rewatch it. The same thing, if you can't make the live I do in my virtual party club, you can always go back and rewatch it as well. It stays up. You have access to it anytime you want. But you can always paint it again, but a lot of parents, if they're painting it, they're like, it's all right, but I think I'm just going to give it to my daughter and my son and put it in her room because they don't critique as much. They always say, oh, it's so good, Mom. Well, maybe most children say that. All right, so we have, you guys, that's the main part of the background. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to stipple on I'm going to check this. Still a little bit wet. So let's just actually move to the land. And we're going to end up maybe putting some white in the sky too. I think that's dry enough. But so I'm going to do the land back here. You can avoid that, but that's the way to hide this right here. If you have any kind of lines that you want to hide, you can do that. So I'm going to go into my number 12 flat brush, and I'm just going straight into black. Now, I like, the artist black. This is actually Deco Art, but this is their finer paint. I don't like to buy like cheaper blacks. Cheap white is fine, but not cheaper blacks, because they tend to be a little bit translucent. And you just have to do more coats. It's not a terrible thing. But if you can buy the nicer paints, it's well worth it. They go a lot further than you think. So let's go. I'm going to make some kind of hill here. And this is just using the edge of my brush. Kind of doing that. Now, could I have brought the water up or the sun down? Sure, I could have. And then I'm just going to fill all this in black. And you can also do, like, maybe we'll do a palm tree in the background or something fun too. And if you didn't want to do this, you can always do, a tree off to the side here and then even that out a little bit more. So I'm just going to slowly fill this in. Just a nice thin coat right now. Fill that in. And maybe you want to make it kind of bumpy too, across here. So this view, since this part is way thicker than my previous one, kind of like here, this view would be more close up. So this rock or this edge or this land is a lot closer to you, like maybe a reef or something, because it's thicker. When it's thinner, obviously it's further away. So I'm just going to fill that in lightly. I'm going to come back to that, so we're going to let that dry. And you can see even on here that it's not filled in all the way. And that's just because the paint was telling me, basically, by not covering that area, like, that's enough. Let's move on. Let's come back. So I'm going to take that brush, and I'm going to rinse it off really, really well here. Get all that black off. And then let's come in, I'm going to grab my round brush. You can grab any brush for this. Sometimes a flat brush is really nice. But since my blue is fairly dry here, you can kind of lightly touch it to make sure, or use your hair dryer if you have one. We're going to do these marks right here, the sunshine marks, the glow from the sun, right? So what I actually like to do is start with just some white. And I'm going to do, it's almost like you're teasing the canvas. So I'm going to come across and just do some soft white lines. It's going to look really white right now, but if we put the white down first, the other colors tend to pop a lot more. And I'm just going to kind of thin it out towards the bottom, like it's getting closer, right? But it's wider at the base. Kind of like so. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to wipe off that excess paint. Make sure there's no blue on there. And I'm going to come back in with my yellow. So I'm going to go into my yellow. And I'm going to start putting that yellow right over this white. I know it's wet, but that's fine. And what's nice is you want to do it just a few times, especially if your blue is a little bit wet still, because you don't want that yellow to turn into green. And it's okay to like get it chunky and textured. You don't want to blend this because that's how it turns green. You just want to get some yellow on there. And again, if you start to get that green color, wipe off that brush and grab some new paint. Okay. And now I'm probably also going to go in with some orange. Just a little bit. Probably more up here. And now this is definitely one of the easier paintings I teach. This is pretty simple, pretty quick. Of course, I say that it might not be easy to everyone, and that's okay. But a lot of my paintings are a little bit more detailed. They have a little bit more going on. And if they get too detailed, that's when I provide like a tracer to where you guys can trace it on and then helps you stay in the lines. All right, so little step there. We'll come back and add some white. Let's go to our sun. So just like what we were doing down here, we're gonna do white up in the sun. Again, this is optional, but it does add a little bit of just, I mean, this is pretty cartoony, but I guess if you were to be realistic with this painting, it adds a little bit more color. Since it's dry, none of my colors are really coming off. And I'm grabbing just a tiny bit of paint to do this, you guys. You do not need a lot. Almost like a dry brush. You can almost hear how dry it is too. Now, super easy a lot of the time when you're doing something like this to kind of get caught up and just do too much and you're like, oh, I should have stopped. Yeah, you probably should have. A lot of the time in my classes, I always say, I think you should stop. And they say, no, but it's so fun. I'm like, I know, but you're just bored. Brushes down, hands up. And they're very thankful for that. All right, so while we're still letting this dry, because it's just a little bit thicker, right? We're gonna come down to do the water on the sand. So like the water brushing up from the, like the white froth up onto the sand. When I do that, my favorite brush is this number 12 brush. Now this number 12 brush is actually, it's pretty student-like, right? So see how the end of this is so splayed compared to the end of this. This is a nicer brush. This is actually what I'm going for. So cheaper brushes are good in this. Or you can also take a round brush to do this and kind of just daub it on. So what I like to do is kind of flay it a little bit. Grab some white, and then I just dot it off. I don't want a ton of paint. And what I'm gonna start doing, move this up a little bit, is just lightly daubing right on the edge of that water line. And you can go up, you can go down, like there's bubbles, right? What I tend to do is I actually I'm turning the brush in my hand while I'm daubing, so I don't just have this perfect straight across line of white. And I'm just doing it over like where this line is. Now, of course, like I'm not like a fine artist, right? So if you are and you're watching this and you're like, girl, that is not how you do it, that's fine. This is the way I like to teach. This is a fun, easy way for beginners to learn how to do it, to make it still look good. And get some bubbles in there. If you want to do like a little bit in the water, you can. This part is very light. And then you're going to keep going all the way across the canvas. So if you were doing this at home and you were just learning, you can always, like if you rewatch something like this or watch any of the ones that I have on my page, you can always mute me. It's way more therapeutic if you're listening to music and just kind of watch the process. Or you can listen first and then do it later, because the goal of when I paint, the goal is to have it kind of therapeutic, right? So I always turn on some nice calming music, some Jack Johnson maybe, and start painting. Sometimes if I'm in the mood, I turn on, some classic rock or something fun. Depends on who you are and what relaxes you. So see, I'm coming down a little bit into the sand too, because obviously waves do not have that perfect line. Something like so. Maybe put some more up in that water. Like some backhand waves there. Now, how nice of it, some of you might even live in an area like this, but how nice would it be to be on a beach like this right now? the Pacific Northwest where I'm at, we don't have beaches like this. We have to go other places. All right, so I'm going to come back to my black here. And I'm just going to do another coat of black, just to make sure the rest of that gets covered so I don't see any of that color peeking through. And there we go. Nice there. Okay, I have a little chunk of black here. This would also look really pretty on wood, if you had some wood going on, if you had some palettes or something. So I have that. What I actually like to do is just make it look a little bushy, if you will, so little streaks on top. The way I like to do that is I'm going back into my round brush, and I'm going to dip right into some black. And when I do this, so I guess the best way to explain it is you don't want to start right at the top of the hill and flick up. You want to always start within the black that you're doing, like maybe down like a, ½ inch or something. And very lightly, it's like you're teasing it, right? So it's like if you were, obviously it's animal cruelty, but just pretend you're like painting a hummingbird or something. So light. And it's almost like you're running out of paint. Also, keep in mind, grass grows in different directions, so you're not going to go just straight up and down. And I always say you always just flick up, you never come back down, because that's not what's going to give that wispy look at the top. And I like to do this anywhere on the sides, kind of just fill in that top so it doesn't just look like awkwardly flat and black. Go here. And this is where if you wanted to, like maybe you wanted to do a curve of a tree, do a palm tree. So again, I'm always starting right deep within that black in the shape and coming up just a tad bit. Now, what would be really cool is if you, what if you drew like a silhouette of, someone sitting on a rock or something? It would have to be pretty small. I've done that in multiple classes too. What I love about teaching is, I'll come and I'll be like, oh, we're going to paint this. And I always like to give options and say, you could try this, you could try this. And I help people with it because, everyone wants to try it, but they're not always super courageous. So I'll help them kind of outline it a little bit, give them an idea, and help them work with it, because I want them to go home with a painting that they like, obviously. I don't want them to go home angry. Hopefully, if they're coming to these classes, of course it's more about, you're learning how to paint and you get better the more you do it. But I think I have had one person cry. But she was very, very hard on herself. Very hard on herself. So I just gave her a new canvas and told her to try at home now that she has that technique, and it turned out a lot better, and now she's a great painter. Okay. See, nice and grassy. That just adds a nice little effect to it. Rinse that off. And so we're still going to let this dry a little bit because I do want to put white in there, but I can see from the glow that it's actually still it's got some wet paint on it. So to draw something in the sand, this is completely up to you. You can draw something like words, you can say love, you can say your initials, you can say your last name. I just have another round brush, but you can grab the same one and rinse all the black off. We're going to do, so see how we stippled on like the little wave here? We're going to do the same thing and stipple on with some darker brown our creation of whatever we want to do, right? So I'm going to do hearts again. So I'm going to go back into this brown. This is my dark brown. Just get a little bit on there. And I'm just going to lightly stipple with my round brush. Now I'm not going to go in one perfect line, right? I'm going to just stipple back and forth into, you can kind of pre-draw maybe what you want. Get a nice little shape on there. But you want to kind of stipple back and forth, kind of like what we were doing very lightly. And just fill in whatever shape or words that you want to do. And this is something fun too, because you know, if you watch paint tutorials, you can, depending on, you know, the platform you like to use to talk to all your friends and family or have happy hour or something, you can do a virtual paint party with your friends and family at different places and just all watch the same tutorial. I do a lot of private parties that are virtual right now, so I'm teaching people from like different parts of the United States. They're all family, and it's really fun. All right, and then I'm going to take this one, and I'm going to do a heart, and I'm going to overlap it. Just a little guy off to the side here. There we go. It's okay if it's not all the same thickness either. It's like you're drawing in the sand with your feet or your fingers or whatever, right? You have that load of sand that comes off to the side. And then, so I have the hearts in the dark brown, right? So I just wiped off my brush. I'm going to go back in with a little bit of white. And I'm going to stipple just like the waves crashed on top of it. So a little bit on the top here. And then maybe it did it on the top of this bottom heart too. Maybe there's some water bubbles still down there. Now see, when you look at this painting, and if you're not always a painter, right, you're like, I don't know about that. But if you go step by step and just one line at a time, I mean, we only have, what, 1, 2 things left to do? It goes so fast and you're like, oh, okay, that wasn't too bad. Probably surprised yourself. All right, I might do a little bit down here too. And I'm overlapping on my brown, that's okay. Just adds like a different shade, like maybe it got the sand wet. Kind of like so. And you can blend in that brown a little bit more if you want to. Now if you have a nicer brush, like you're not slamming that brush down onto the canvas, that will ruin your brush. That's why I always use student brushes for my classes, because if you don't paint often, you don't really know how to care for your brushes or how easy to be, right? So we got that on there. And then, so the sand color, so originally we had mixed this light brown with some white to get that sand color. So I'm actually just going to take this light brown here. No white. And I'm going to take some, wipe it off. I'm going to do some shading around the sand. So I'm just going to do some, it's almost like a dry brush, like I want it to blend. Just off to the side, very, very lightly. And I don't want to go around the entire thing. You can see how it just adds a little bit more dimension to wherever this sand is, and wherever the water touched it, it just, you know, it always does all these weird things, so just makes it look a little bit more like we tried to make it how it actually looks. I would say realistic, but like I said, this is not a realistic painting. You bring it down a little bit more. But you'll start to notice, like if you're a heavy hand or if you have too much paint, like how much it affects the painting. So I always start lighter and add more. And even when I put paint on my palette, you can see how much paint I wasted, right? And I always try to start small, but when we're starting, we put a ton on there. We don't need that much. All right, so if you're doing words or something, that might take you a little bit longer, and that's okay. I'm going to start putting white now in these streaks here. Again, you don't have to do it. You can also go back to blue. So it's still a little bit wet, but I'm going to put a little bit white back in here. And if it's a little bit wet, it does grab those colors and kind of spread it around for me. You can also add that pink in there. Let's see what the pink looks like. Let me try it before you guys do it. Not too bad, right? And that just adds a little bit of color. Now let's just say like I feel like I want to add something else. I want to do something else. Well, maybe I'm just going to take this green or this blue or even mix them together and just do a little bit more lines in the water. Add some detail. Most of the time I do this just to kind of use up that excess paint that I have on my plate. And I really like that. You know, if I sat here and thought about how much more I wanted to add, maybe I would do a little bit here. But again, maybe think about it first, because I mean, we want to keep painting. Well, let's just paint another painting, because sometimes this is where, like I was saying, I tell you I need to stop. So I will. I am done, and maybe you guys are too, or maybe you're still working, but this is how easy it can be. So again, you do have a free gift if you go to, I know this is going to be upside down, maybe, but if you go to canvaslychromatize.com, you get a free gift, and they're just kids tracers. If you don't have kids, you don't need them. Or you can find me on Facebook or Instagram at Canvasly Chromatize Paint Parties, and then you can like the page or follow if you choose, and you can get some virtual paintings, or you can also be in the Facebook virtual club, and that is $35 US a month, only as long as you want. So I think that I would love to see them if you guys did paint with me. I would love if you guys posted pictures or sent me pictures, and love to see it. Other than that, you know what? Take care and stay healthy, and just try to stay creative and happy. I know this is a hard time for all of us. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to reach out. And I believe that's it. I'm going to turn this camera just a little bit around, and you guys are done painting. So good job. Take care.